Yo, what's good everyone? Welcome to the Fantasy Football Prodigy channel. And in this video, we're going to be talking about my starts of the week for week 1 of the 2023 fantasy football season. Game 1 is already in the books, that awesome matchup between the Lions and the Chiefs. That was a great game. But we're going to talk about the Sunday and Monday games. And I'm going to tell you my top starts of the week for week 1. Get that 1-0 record going early. Before we get into it, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my start of the week videos for the rest of the season. All right, we're going to get right into it with the quarterback position. And my first start at QB for week 1 is going to be Tua of the Miami Dolphins taking on the LA Chargers. I obviously like Justin Herbert on the other side of the field in this game as well. But in these videos, I'm going to try to give you a little more under the radar options. Like, I'm not going to tell you Jalen Hurts is my start of the week because that's obvious. Christian McCaffrey, guys like that, those are people you are playing every week. But I love Tua in this matchup. This game has a very high over-under. It projects to be very high scoring. And he still has Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle as those elite weapons. Tua last season shows that he has elite big game potential. It didn't always happen. He did have some disappointing games as well. But he showed last season that in the right matchup, when his weapons are healthy and the offense is clicking, he can put together massive performances. So I would try to get him into your lineup if you don't have one of those auto start type of quarterbacks. I like him as a low to mid quarterback one, but he has as much upside as anyone in this high scoring game. My next quarterback start of the week is going to be Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks. He is taking on the LA Rams. The Rams are not what they once were. Their defense has taken a step back. And Geno he had one good game against the Rams last season in week 13 at the Rams. He was 28 for 39, 71.8% completion percentage, 367 yards. He had 3 touchdowns and 1 pick. And then in week 18, it was a little bit of a disappointment. 19 of 31 passing, 213 yards, 1 touchdown. He did throw a couple interceptions. It looks like he did also have 51 rushing yards in that game. But either way, I do like Geno Smith as a solid start in week 1. He still has Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, and they obviously drafted JSN, who could make that offense even more potent. I think Geno Smith is going to keep the ball rolling with his successful season last year, and I like him as a low quarterback one in week 1. And we're going to move on to a bit more of a streaming option, maybe a 2 quarterback guy, and that is Derek Carr at home. He has a chip on his shoulder, and he's taking on a Titans defense that gave it up to offenses in general last season. Maybe their defense is a little bit better, but we really don't have much to go off of. It is week 1. But when you're looking at streaming options, maybe you took a quarterback super late. Maybe you're in a 2 quarterback league and you're wondering who to start in that super flex or second quarterback spot. I think Derek Carr is a great streaming and 2 quarterback option. Now we're going to move on to the running back position, and we're going to start with J.K. Dobbins, running back of the Baltimore Ravens. The Texans' run defense was absolutely terrible last season, like historically bad. One of the worst run defenses we've seen in a long time. And even if they did improve the defense, it's not like they could have improved it that much, most likely, to where they're going to be a tough matchup. So they do project to be a juicy matchup for running backs. The Ravens are heavy favorites, and J.K. Dobbins should get work early and often in this game. And it projects to be a game where he can grind it out at the end, try to run the clock down. I do think the Ravens are going to try to throw the ball more this year than they have in years past, but I just don't think they're going to have to against the Houston Texans in this matchup. We saw that all the time last season with this Texans team, where teams just didn't have to throw the ball because they would just run the ball a little bit in the first half, be up big, and they just keep running it in the second half. Dobbins does have some question marks going into this season, but I think in week 1, you have to put him in your lineup if you can. He's a low running back 1, high running back 2 in this matchup. My next running back start of the week is Raheem Mostert, running back of the Miami Dolphins. They are taking on the LA Chargers. Raheem Mostert was one of my favorite steals late in drafts. I did not get him in any leagues, but I wish I did. And he should see plenty of work in what projects to be a high scoring game against a run defense that was exposed quite a bit last season. He should be the main back, at least early in the season, just with some of the injuries that they have going on there. Season long, we'll see if he can stay healthy, but in week 1, he should be healthy, ready to go. And in a game that projects to be high scoring, I like him as a solid running back 2 or flex play with some big play upside because he does have the ability to make those big plays that can change a week. And my third running back start of the week is actually a duo. I'm going to go with the Washington Commanders backfield duo, Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson. The Washington Commanders are heavy favorites at home against a bad Cardinals defense. They should be leading in this game, which will allow them to run the ball throughout the game and into the second half. It could be a situation where Brian Robinson is sort of the grinder to run out the clock at the end of the game if the game goes as most people project, with the Commanders leading late in the game. But either way, I think it'll at least be a competitive game where both running backs should be able to get some amount of work. They do kind of cannibalize each other. I think this will be a true committee, but I think there's enough potential there, and it's a good enough matchup where at least one of these guys is going to be good for fantasy. It could just come down to who falls in the end zone, and who knows, maybe Gibson gets the yardage, Robinson falls in the end zone. We'll see what happens, but I like both as nice, solid flex options for week one. We're going to move on to the wide receiver position, and my first wide receiver start of the week is Chris Olave of the New Orleans Saints. I already talked about his quarterback, Derek Carr, earlier, and maybe this is a little bit too obvious of a call, and you're likely already starting him no matter what, but I just wanted to talk about him in this video because I think he's going to level up and become that next upper tier of fantasy wide receiver. I wasn't able to get him. I got him in a guillotine league, but that was it. I didn't get him in either of my redraft leagues. I wanted to draft him in Dynasty. I wasn't able to get him, and I'm really regretting it because I think he's going to put together a great season. He showed a ton of upside as a rookie last year. And like I said, you're probably already starting him, but I just want to talk about this matchup. It is really great. The Titans gave up so many points to fantasy wide receivers last season, and I think he's going to start the season hot with his new quarterback, Derek Carr, who we've seen be able to supply fantasy wide receivers with enough targets and enough work to make them elite fantasy options. He is essentially a must start at the wide receiver position, and he could be a week winner if he's able to hit on some big plays in this game against the bad defense from last season at least, because he does have that big play ability. So fire him up with confidence in week one. Next up, we're going with another Chris. This is actually going to be a duo, kind of like with the Washington Commanders backfield. My second wide receiver start is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver duo, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. For whatever reason, I just have a feeling that Baker Mayfield, he at least has the potential to have somewhat of a career resurgence this season. I don't know why. I just have this feeling that with the weapons, and I feel like he's been a little bit slept on, I could see him maybe bouncing back. But we'll see what happens. But at the very least, I do think he will be able to get the ball to his top elite receiving options in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Mike Evans was one of my favorite values in drafts, by the way. But Chris Godwin was another great value in my opinion. I am a Vikings fan. They are taking on my Minnesota Vikings in week one, and I will be present at that game. So I'm hoping that the Vikings just absolutely annihilate them. But I do have to acknowledge the Minnesota Vikings defensive struggles lately. It's been a while since we've had a good defense. And this matchup should leave plenty of opportunities for this receiving duo to make plays. It could be a situation where maybe one outproduces the other, but with this type of duo, you kind of just put them both in your lineup and see what happens. I like both of them as nice, wide receiver 2, maybe wide receiver 3 plays if you're in a 3 wide receiver league, or you can throw them in the flex as well. I think they do have potential to make some plays in this game. My final wide receiver start of the week is Jahan Dotson, wide receiver of the Washington Commanders. He gets a good matchup against the bad Arizona Cardinals defense in week one. He flashed as a rookie last season, showed some ability to get in the end zone, and I think we will see him put together a great year 2 campaign, starting with a good fantasy performance in week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals. There is a little bit of risk that the Commanders are up early in this game, and they're comfortable enough on the scoreboard to where they don't necessarily have to throw it as much in the second half, but I still think he should be able to make enough plays in this game to be a solid start. And how many times do we see it where we think the game script is going to go one way, and all of a sudden you're in a competitive game? The NFL is crazy, which is why football and fantasy football is so fun to watch. But no matter what the game script, I think he is talented enough. He showed enough as a rookie. And their quarterback, Sam Howell, it's been all good things, all good reports from him. So I think he'll be able to actually get the ball to Dotson and McLaurin this season. So I love Jahan Dotson as a solid start as a wide receiver 2 or flex in week 1. We're going to move on to the tight end position. I'm going to go with Tyler Higbee of the LA Rams. Tyler Higbee last season had 108 targets at the tight end position, which is incredible. And he already projected to continue to be a high target option in this offense. But now with Cooper Kupp, superstar wide receiver, ruled out for week 1 against the Seahawks, his volume is basically guaranteed to be great. The Seattle Seahawks were also one of the best matchups, and they were arguably the best matchup, if I remember correctly, for tight ends last season. So when you consider the opponent and that juicy matchup, combined with the opportunity for targets in this game, Tyler Higbee is a mid-tier tight end 1 in the first week of the season. And we're going to move on to the next tight end start of the week. And remember, guys, I'm trying to give you some helpful options. I'm not trying to tell you to auto start guys. Well, Travis Kelce didn't play in week 1, so really maybe there are no auto starts at the tight end outside of him. Like you could say like Mark Andrews, Darren Waller was probably an auto start with the reports out of camp, which how much he's going to be targeted, but he's dealing with a hamstring injury now. I would still start him if he plays, but I digress. My whole point is to say, at a certain tier of tight end, you're going to have some risk and it's going to be a gamble. And a lot of times you're banking on a touchdown, but most people don't have that locked in tight end 1. So I'm trying to give you guys some options that you can start at that position. And I'm going to try to give you guys that have some upside. You know, if you're deciding between guys who can get 30 yards versus 40 yards, there's really not a big difference there. But my next tight end start of the week in week 1, I think has some upside to actually make a difference and make an impact in week 1. And that is going to be Gerald Everett, tight end of the LA Chargers. We already talked about how this game between the Chargers and the Dolphins has the potential to be high scoring and flat out electric for fantasy. And you just want pieces of this game. One tip is that you really want to target those games with those high over-unders that project to be high scoring. Obviously, you know, if a game is high scoring, you're not going to start Gerald Everett over maybe like, you know, let's say Mark Andrews just because of the over-under. But it just goes to show that there is potential for offense and touchdowns in this game. Obviously, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are good starts for week 1, and I would put them in my lineup at the wide receiver position. But if you are streaming the tight end position, Gerald Everett is not a bad guy to take a shot on in week 1. He has shown in the past the ability to have some good games, and the Dolphins were a good matchup for tight ends last season. And as far as the streaming tight end position goes, he's a decent bet to get in the end zone especially if the game is as high scoring as projected. So if you're streaming the tight end position and you don't know what to do, I think Gerald Everett is a low tight end 1, high tight end 2 option for week 1. And that's going to do it for my starts of the week for week 1 of the 2023 fantasy football season. I hope I'm right on these. I'm going to be wrong on some, but all we can do is take educated guesses, look at what we know. It's especially hard to predict these things in week 1 because we don't even know what we don't know about some of these teams. I'm basing a lot of these calls on matchups, and who knows, some of these defenses that we think are terrible, maybe they'll end up being one of the better defenses this year. So we'll just have to see. That's what makes week 1 exciting, but I'm trying my best to be as accurate as possible. But at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video, and stay tuned for the week 2 starts of the week, and I will see you guys later. Peace out and good luck in week 1.